I would like to welcome back our listeners to Compassion for Companions. My name is Julia Andrade, and for this episode, I will be discussing the grief response due to pet loss as well as some factors which can improve the euthanasia procedure in veterinary hospitals. I would like to give credit to McCutcheon from the study Grief Resulting from Euthanasia and Natural Death of Companion Animals, as well as Gerwels for the study called Adjustment to the Death of a Companion Animal when discussing the grief response. Lastly, I'd like to give credit to Martin for the study Factors Associated with Client Staff and Student Satisfaction regarding small animal euthanasia procedures at a veterinary teaching hospital when discussing ways of improvement for euthanasia procedure. Now, in the study, they used a scale with factors like despair, anger, hostility, guilt, social isolation, loss of control, and a couple of others to acquire the grief experience inventory scores between owners. Those whose pets had experienced an unexpected death due to an accident, and ones whose pet's death was more expected, like illness. Using the information from the questionnaires, a score for each of the factors mentioned above was obtained. With these results, a mixed MANOVA was run. The results showed that there were no significant differences in the adjustment process between both scenarios. This shows that regardless of the cause of death, the loss of a pet can be very hard emotionally to the owners. Looking at these grieving factors, they are similar in those of grieving the loss of a significant other, although many people still don't accept the loss of a pet to be grieved so deeply. There are studies comparing the loss of a human and the loss of a pet where the grief process is very similar. I have recently experienced the loss of a pet, and the factors used are many of the emotions, if not all, that I was feeling. This then leads me into the factors that can improve the euthanasia procedure in a veterinary hospital. In the study, clients, staff, and students were asked a series of questionnaires as to what was important during this process. The top 4 things mentioned were the option of being present as a client for procedure, a private place being provided, having a home-like setting, and for all the paperwork to be handled beforehand. For the option of being present, it was also mentioned that knowing the procedure in detail, so steps of what is going to happen in detail as well as advising of any occurrences that can happen, like the loss of bladder control or vocalization coming from their pet. Having an idea of what to expect helps the owners while going through the process. Second, a private room away from other staff or clients, allowing the owner to interact with their pet in private before the procedure as well as after it. Within a private room, another recommendation was to have a private exit, allowing the owner to exit the building without having to walk through a busy waiting area where other pets and clients will see them in an emotional state. This, I think, is a good idea because, like I mentioned above, I recently had my pet die back in August, and when I walked out of the veterinary hospital, I would have rather walked out where nobody could see me in tears than having to walk through the lobby where there's people waiting and everybody sees that you're in a crisis. So I think having a private exit is a very good idea when going through this kind of emotional stress. But moving on to the third thing, a home-like setting was said to make the experience easier by many respondents due to many owners seeing their pets as part of the family. So having a comfortable and peaceful home-like setting makes it easier for the family. And lastly, for all the paperwork to be handled beforehand, this alleviates some of the client's stress because they don't want to be discussing prices or be up at the front after going through this procedure. So it is best to make sure all paperwork is done before the procedure takes place. Well, that is all for my episode, and hope this information will help in advising of the emotions and hardships that is brought by the loss of a pet, allowing for more compassion when talking to an owner who is going through this. Also, hope that the top 4 factors found important in improving the veterinary hospital or clinic for euthanasia procedures will be heard and hopefully used in more of the veterinary hospitals and clinics. Thank you for listening to Compassion for Companions. Until next time.